Mythical creatures have played a prominent role in the folk tales and literature of every culture worldwide throughout human history. And I like swords and sorcery as much as the next geek. But I would never propose that Gulliver's Travels, the Iliad, the tales of King Arthur, or the works of Tolkien are historically accurate or divinely inspired, no matter how much I'd like them to be true. Biblical apologists, on the other hand, are famous for touting the inerrancy of their holy book. They credit divine inspiration for what is clearly a work of fiction. Any rational person must recognize that much of what's written in the Bible is pure fantasy. Giants, unicorns, satyrs, and dragons are fascinating mythological creatures, but any rational person understands that they're just the product of the human imagination. Few Christians would be willing to profess their belief in these fantastic creatures, yet they're all mentioned several times in the Bible, not as parable, allegory, or poetry, but as tangible living beings.
Will the unicorn be willing to serve thee or abide by thy crib? Canst thou bind the unicorn with his band in a furrow? Or will he harrow the valleys after thee? But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and the houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there.
The unicorn is mentioned in several passages throughout the Old Testament, but is often interpreted as an ox in most modern Bibles, and the satyr is often interpreted as goat. The problem with accepting the modern translation is that in the original Hebrew, the words for unicorn and satyr are always used differently than the words used for goat or ox. Check the description box for information on the specific Hebrew words, translation details, and biblical passages if you're interested, because I'm not interested in babbling on about biblical interpretation. Apologists can try to explain away unicorns as mutant deer, and satyrs as horny hermits and goat-hide chaps. They can reinterpret the cockatrice mentioned 3 times in Isaiah as well as in Jeremiah 8:17 to be a mere serpent, although Isaiah 14:29 describes it as a fiery flying serpent. Theists can assert that the giants, mentioned at least 19 times in the Bible, were human-angel crossbreeds who not only towered over, but often ruled over men, yet happened to leave absolutely no trace of their existence. And creationists can claim the behemoth, described in the book of Job, as a gigantic, powerful creature that can only be tamed by God, and whose tail is so large that it moves like a cedar, is actually a biblical-era dinosaur, even though the creature is mentioned as having a navel, which an egg-hatched lizard wouldn't. Then there's also the fire-breathing sea monster known as Leviathan, mentioned in Psalms, Job, and Isaiah. Now, I'll grant you that breathing fire underwater would be a great party trick, but sea monsters are not friggin' real. And of course, all 16 biblical references to dragons are really just crocodiles, or maybe just metaphor, whatever suits the believer's whim or argument of the moment. Now I ask you, if those mythical entities aren't real, why then would someone think that witches, wizards, angels, demons, Satan, or God himself are anything other than fantasy as well? The answer is simple, because the faithful want to believe it, and those they look up to have given confidence to that belief. And its credibility is further elevated by stamping the biblical stories with the seal of divine inspiration, thus insulating them from honest, critical scrutiny. Let's face it, believers will go to any lengths to justify or explain away the absurdities in their scriptures. But I go with Occam's razor. The Bible is the product of the human imagination. The God concept and the supposed divine inspiration of written text, used as a control mechanism, is as old as our earliest recorded history. But so too is the creation of fantastic imaginary creatures like the jackal-headed Anubis, the snake-haired Medusa, unicorns, satyrs, angels, demons, and countless gods. The human imagination existed well before we achieved the ability to write. And when we learned to write, we did what humans always do. We exaggerated and made shit up to impress or intimidate others. But if you're gullible or deluded enough to think that satyrs and sea monsters are real in light of modern science,
error.